All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Atlas Core U.S. Fellowship informational webinar. My name is Meredith, and I'm the Senior Program Manager here at Atlas Core, so I help manage our application process and support the recruitment of our applicants. So I'm excited to see all of you joining us today, and I'd like to introduce one of our fellows.
Hi everyone, I'm Renda. I'm an Atlas Core Fellow, Class 13, and I'm from Sudan, and I'm serving currently at CARE USA in DC.
Great, great. So just a quick logistical question or logistical note that you can, if you have any questions, you can enter them in the comments section of our YouTube video, and we will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. So first we're going to talk a little bit about Atlas Core, where Renda's going to talk a little bit about her experience. I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions, and then at the end of the webinar we'll answer any questions that remain, and so that will be your chance. And so if you enter a question and we don't get to it right away, just please be patient. We'll discuss it near the end. So first up, I want to just give a brief sort of introduction of Atlas Core for some of you who maybe just heard about it very recently. Atlas Core is an international network of nonprofit leaders and organizations. Our mission is to address critical social issues by developing leaders, strengthening organizations, and promoting innovation through an overseas fellowship of skilled nonprofit professionals. We engage leaders committed to the nonprofit sector in 6 to 18-month professional fellowships at organizations to learn best practices, build organizational capacity, and return home to create a network of global change makers. Fellows serve full-time at host organizations located either in the United States or in Latin America. We also have an office in Colombia, South America, working on issues that complement their expertise. And fellows are developing their leadership skills while also sharing best practices and supplementing their knowledge with theoretical topics presented in our Atlas Core Global Leadership Lab, our training series. Some of the benefits of our program, aside from the service at a host organization, is that we cover a living stipend, we cover a flight for our U.S. fellows, and the cost of a visa. We sponsor visas. So those are some of the benefits. And also joining, a big benefit is just joining this network of nonprofit leaders. We've been around for about 8 years now, and in that time we've engaged 235 nonprofit leaders from 57 different countries who have served at 119 host organizations. So we're very proud of the diversity and breadth of our network. Most fellowships are 12 months with the option to extend for another 6 months, so 18 months total. If the host organization offers that. And we have a really wide variety of issues and host organizations that our fellows are serving at. Fellows can serve and work on issues on anything related from education to the environment to human rights to social entrepreneurship, a wide variety of topics. And they can be using a wide variety of skill sets and working on a wide variety of projects. So anything from monitoring and evaluation to report writing to fundraising to communications. Our fellows really kind of do it all, and what they do during their fellowship depends a lot on where they're placed. And so that's a brief overview. Renda here, like she said, is placed at CARE, so I'd like her to tell us a little bit about her fellowship.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Okay, I'll just start to tell you about, like, I had 8 years of experience when I applied for the fellowship program, so I was already working and I had a job and all that. But I was at that point in my career where I wanted to do something different and to get some space to think about what next, actually. So I heard about the fellowship program, and I was interested to apply because I thought it would give me that different context and a different experience, and it can also get me thinking about what would be my next steps. So I applied, and a year later, almost a year later, I got placed. I was a finalist, but I didn't get placed immediately. But then I got placed with Care USA, which was just in time. I had completed 3 years in my last job, and I was starting to get like, okay, I need to move on. Yeah. So it was good timing, and I was really excited to get the opportunity and to work for Care. And I also had the opportunity to talk with Care in detail about what are my tasks going to be and what am I going to be helping with and all that. So that also helped give me an idea of what I'll be doing with them for a year, which was interesting as well. And Care is, maybe you know or you don't know, but it is a big non-profit, and it operates in a lot of countries around the world. It also operates in Sudan and in South Sudan. Yeah, so they do a lot of good work trying to like eradicate poverty all over the world, which is a cause anyone, I guess, would want to support. So in that sense, it was a good fit, and I felt comfortable doing the going along for the program. Now it's been 6 months, I guess, right?
Yeah.
More than 6 months. I'm almost halfway through my fellowship. It's interesting. And it's a bit different from what you think it would be, but it's still interesting. It's a bit challenging with the stipend and all, especially when you're working and you had all that experience and you're used to getting your salary, and you don't need to worry about a stipend and all that. But it gets better. Like for me, the first couple of months or 3 months were a bit challenging, but then yeah, you tend to like learn how to. I'm actually now saving, which is great. Yeah, so I'm not spending all my money. So that's a bit of that was a bit of a challenge for me, but it was okay because I think the first months it was more like we were not settled into accommodation. We didn't like really get to know the place well and to organize ourselves better. But then it got really better. So that was just a bit of the challenge there, and. With my work with Care is actually good. I'm getting this like new dimension of managing grants and getting involved with reporting and monitoring grants that run across like different countries. Something I haven't done before. I mainly worked on finance and admin stuff back home. That was my whole work experience was on finance and administration and resources management for nonprofits. So this gives me a different element, and Care are really nice in that they can offer any more stuff I would want to be involved in. So I'm gonna get to do more of grants management. I'm gonna be involved in more than the 4 grants that I'm doing right now, which is really helpful because it gave me a little bit of like sense of how to manage grants and work on reporting to donors and all that, which is something new to me and something that I thought would always be an addition to me. And I got to do that with Care, which is interesting as well. Yeah, and it also gives me the space. I must say that sometimes it's not that busy, and sometimes it is that busy. So it gives you the space, not like in a regular job. And I've been like thinking a lot about what do I want to do next. So that's the good thing I think for me, because now I'm like thinking, okay, maybe I need to go and do my CMA or what's my next step and all that. So in that sense, it's been an experience so far, I guess.
Great.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Awesome. Well, the next thing that I wanted to go over is we have, let's see, I think it's 12 sort of frequently asked questions that we hear all the time from applicants who are in the application process or thinking about applying. So I want to go over those frequently asked questions. Brenda's going to ask them of me, and I'll answer them. And of course, you can chip in as well. And hopefully these will answer most of the questions that you have on your mind. And then after that, we can get to any remaining questions. So.
All right. Okay, Meredith. So how do I apply?
Yes, so first you're going to want to make sure you meet the eligibility requirements. Our eligibility requirements are pretty simple. You need to have a bachelor's degree, be proficient in English, have 2 to 10 years of experience, and be age 35 or under, usually age 23 to 35 roughly. And then you have to be committed to returning home at the end of the fellowship and not staying in the U.S. And once you've determined that you meet those eligibility requirements, and we'll be talking a little bit more about them in the next few questions, Then there's a 3-step application process. The first step is an online application, which you can access through our website. If you go to apply.atlascore.org, there's a big button there saying start your application. So you just register for our online application. It's a pretty straightforward application. It asks for your education background, your employment history, what are your top skills, what are your top interest areas, and then there's 6 300-word essays. So they're not even that long in terms of essays. And you would also submit recommendation letters or ask your references to submit recommendation letters for you. If you have a strong application, you may get moved on to the second step of the process, which is an English test. And it's a time-written English test. It's 1 hour, 2 essay questions, and you're just writing answers. If you have a strong English test and you're very proficient in English, then you may move to the third step of the process, which is an interview with our selection board members. And so they'll ask you a little bit more about your background as well. And it's a half-hour Skype interview. For people who don't have strong internet connections, we do sometimes do phone interviews. And if you pass all those steps, then you're determined to be a finalist, someone that we consider eligible to be placed with a host organization. As Brenda said, that she was a finalist for a year before she was actually placed with a host organization. So it does vary how long it takes. But then we start the matching process and looking at the profiles that our host organizations have sent us, what they're looking for, and then we try and match finalists based on what they're interested in, what their skill set is. And some finalists may do interviews with host organizations, and then the host organization can select them. So it's really this 3-step process, and that last step, the interview stage of doing an interview with AtlasCore and potentially an interview with the host organization, that's the part that can sometimes take the longest.
Mm-hmm.
So
how long does the application process take?
Yeah, so it can really vary. As far as filling out the application itself, we've tried to make it not too long an application. I know some people may find it longer than others. Filling out the application itself can take anywhere from a few hours to a few days of spending a few hours each day. Some people really, it's really going to vary how long it takes to gather all your information and write those. I think those essays tend to be the most time-consuming part, probably. So that can vary. The overall selection process can take up to 4 to 5 months for a single class of fellows. We bring fellows 3 times a year, January, May, and September. And to select one of those classes can take 4 or 5 or even 6 months. Strong candidates who make it to the finalist stage can be considered for up to a year after they applied, and placement may take several cycles. So, for example, Renda, we were considering her for our class that began in May 2013, but there wasn't a placement available for her. But then she was selected for our class that began in September 2013. So she had to wait a little bit and be patient. You should note that being a finalist is not the same as a fellow. We have far more qualified applicants and strong finalist applicants than we do host organizations. So some finalists never actually get placed. In fact, most never get placed. A lot of them never even get an interview with the host organization. It's a very, very competitive process. We have a 3% acceptance rate. So it's a very competitive process. Just because you've made it to the finalist stage doesn't mean that you've become a fellow. And so I want to warn people, because I sometimes hear, should I accept this other offer because I'm a finalist? So I would advise you don't turn down other opportunities until you've received an official offer, because if you're not in the interview stage with a host organization, you shouldn't turn down other opportunities that come your way until you've actually received an offer. Any other thoughts on the length of the process?
No.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But how does one have enough experience for the fellowship?
Yeah, so we're looking for at least 2 years of experience in the social sector. We have a pretty broad definition of what the social sector is. That can include working in the government. It can include teaching. It can include consulting. It can include working at a social enterprise, so something that's technically not a nonprofit but has a social mission. It can include significant volunteer experience, especially if it's like a full-time volunteer role. So I know some countries have a national volunteer corps where they serve for a year full-time with NGOs. That is acceptable as a year of experience. If you're volunteering like 3 hours a week or something, I'm not necessarily going to count that as like a year of experience. So that's, there's a lot of ways you can get that 2 years of experience. We have had fellows as young as 22 and 23 before, but they've had significant leadership experience that really enhanced their background. But we are, in general, we're looking for 2 years of full-time professional experience. We find that less than that, you're not going to be prepared for the kinds of placements we have. So if you're fresh out of college, your undergrad degree, you may not be quite ready for the fellowship yet. And then I also want to note that for-profit or business experience can be relevant if it can be applied to the social sector. So like I said, if you work for a consulting firm that is technically for-profit, but you're consulting to nonprofits, that can be an example of something that can be applied as experience for the fellowship.
Okay. And how can the applicants make sure they have a good application? Are there any tips or a checklist?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So here are basically my top 5 or 6 tips. Mm-hmm. One is to really make sure you match the eligibility requirements. Mm-hmm. We have a number of people apply who don't match the eligibility requirements, and they don't even make it to the next stage. We screen those people out. So if you don't meet the eligibility requirements, just it's not going to be worth your time to apply. If you have questions about the eligibility requirements, though, ask us. The second thing is to make sure your English is clear and concise and that you've checked over your spelling and your grammar. It's not a bad idea to have, if you have a friend who speaks English really well, to have them sort of read over it. Not to have them write it for you. It should be your own words. But to have them sort of check it over and make sure that you've written a strong application. The third thing is, and this is really, really important, to have very detailed, specific answers. So instead of saying that you just manage volunteers, how many volunteers did you manage? If you say I wrote grant applications, how much money was that grant application for? How much money did you raise? And those are those details that really take a good application to being great. Don't just fill out the bare minimum. You'll notice a lot of the questions on our application have a minimum requirement of you must enter 100 words for these 300-word essays, or 10 words for these 100-word short answers. Don't just fill out the bare minimum. Actually really put thought into those answers and give a lot of detail explaining your background and how your background is a good fit for the fellowship. The first essay question is sort of to write a biography of yourself, just a 1 paragraph. Here's here's this person's background, and that is actually often the first thing our host organizations see of our candidates. So really make sure you have a strong written bio of yourself. That really explains your experience. And there's actually, we even include a little tips sheet on our application. You'll see there's a little link in the question saying, here's some tips on writing your bio. And do read that very carefully and try and follow the instructions, because that will give you a better essay question. The next tip I wanted to share with you is to really kind of sell yourself, really promote yourself. This is the part where it is okay to brag about yourself and how awesome you are. The question you should have in the back of your mind is, if you had 30 seconds to convince a host organization to accept you as their Atlas Corps Fellow, what do you want them to know? And everything in your application should tie back to that question of, how am I going to convince this host organization that I am the perfect fit for them? And that's also true for interviews as well. So really think about promoting yourself. And then the last tip I had is there's one essay question, our fifth essay question, actually sort of trips a lot of people up. It asks them about their successes and failures in their professional life. And I have a number. It may be sort of more of an American style question. I think a lot of other cultures don't ask that sort of question. It could be just a difference of cultures, but a lot of applicants don't really know how to describe a failure. I even get some applicants saying, I've never had a failure before. Everyone's had a failure. But it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to talk about, in fact, it's encouraged to talk about maybe a setback you had that you overcame. Maybe a project didn't go well, but then you learned from it how to do your project better next time. Something along those lines where you can talk about a failure that you overcame. And also successes as well. You know, something that you started, like a project that you led that you are really proud of is a good example of a success that you could describe in that question. It's kind of a tricky question, so I just wanted to briefly touch on that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, and do applicants get to choose their host organization by any chance, or can they suggest what organization they want to be matched with?
Yeah. So the matching process can be a little bit confusing to people who haven't who are new to Atlas Corps. Atlas Corps, in most cases, I'd say about 95% of the cases, Atlas Corps manages the matching process. So we, at the same time that we're recruiting applicants and reviewing your applications, host organizations are also talking to Atlas Corps, and we're getting a feel of, what are the needs on their team? What kind of skills and interests are they looking for in a person? So an organization may say, we're really looking for someone with a background in environmental conservation and monitoring and evaluation, for example. And then we take a look at all our applicants and see, okay, who has that background? Who has the same interests as this host organization, and who has a skill set necessary to be a good fit in this position? So really make sure that you're describing your skills and interest areas well in your application. When you there's a section in the middle of the application to talk about your top 4 skills and your top 4 interest areas. This is, really put some thought into whether those will, what are the most accurate answers for you, because we are going to be using that potentially to help place you with a host organization. And also to make sure you ask questions during the interview. So if you do make it to the stage where you're interviewing with the host organization, this is your chance to ask questions about the position and make sure it's a good fit for you. We usually try and have position descriptions ready by the time of the interview to sort of describe the position to our applicants, but we don't always have those. Sometimes, those position descriptions are in progress, and so you really need to be an investigator and ask questions to make sure that this is a good fit for you, because you want to make sure it's a good fit before you end up accepting the fellowship and coming here. If it's not going to be a good fit for you, it's not going to benefit anyone. So ask a lot of questions about the fit and make sure you describe yourself well. You can suggest host organizations that you're interested in, and sometimes even in the essay questions, people will say, oh, I looked at your list of host organizations, which are all on our website, and I'm interested in these ones. And that's great. It sometimes gives us an idea of what you're interested in, but there are no guarantees. One, because not all of those organizations you list may be interested in taking on a fellow. And secondly, because some of the organizations you do list may actually already be host organizations that we're in talks with, or host organizations that have already taken fellows, and they may not be looking to have another fellow right now. Like Carol already has 2 fellows, for example. So keep that in mind, that you're welcome to suggest host organizations, but there's no guarantees that will get you an interview with them or get you accepted as a fellowship there. It's just sort of it's for informational purposes.
Okay, great. And what will the role of the fellow be in a host organization normally?
Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really wide range of hosts of roles that our fellows play. In all cases, it's not an internship. You are treated like, in some ways, treated like another member of the staff there, except it's really a learning experience as well. Fellows get really substantial projects where they are managing programs or managing huge grants for, a very large international organization. So fellows get pretty significant assignments. That's why we have the experience requirement of that you have to have at least 2 years, because fellows do have responsibilities. And it's a wide variety of projects that they work on, like I said, and people could be doing anything from social media to training to grants management. It really varies on the placement. Fellows do have a say in defining their role, what they do there, but it's also based on what the host organization is looking for. Usually they're looking for fellows come in and do a specific role, but it is a learning experience, and fellows can also look for, look for how it's best going to develop themselves professionally.
Okay. And what will be the experience of the fellow outside the host organization?
Sure, and you probably know more about this than I do.
Yeah.
So the fellow community is a big part of the experience. A number of our fellows actually live with other fellows, and it's a great community that we have where they're organizing social events and getting into discussions on topics about international development. It's a really tight-knit community that we have, and even our alumni. There are resources out there where people can. Really, the best part of the fellowship is the network, is how people can connect each other to resources and opportunities. There's this opportunity for cross-cultural exchange. Even like I said, we've had fellows from 57 different countries. So that means that you're going to meet and possibly even live with people who are from the other side of the world from you. Whether it's Europe or Latin America or Africa or Asia, and we have fellows from very highly developed countries and countries and fellows from more developing countries, fellows from every major religion. We have a lot of diversity there, and so that cross-cultural exchange is a big part of it. And then there's also further opportunities for professional development. Like we do sometimes send a delegation of fellows to particular conferences, like the Social Good Summit or the Clinton Global Initiative conference in September. So there are some opportunities like conferences or events that we have that fellows can take part in. I'm not sure if you had any other thoughts on life outside the host organization.
Yeah, I mean, the fellow community is a huge community, and it's big, and they're always we always organize happy hours and events and stuff that's also fun, apart from conferences.
Yeah,
and
that's true. That's true.
So it's actually, sometimes it's really nice, to have that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, and the next question is where will fellows normally live, and how's the housing?
So housing is ultimately the responsibility of the fellow. In Washington, D.C., there are some group houses managed by an external management company, but placement there is not guaranteed. Rooms are assigned on a first-come, first-served basis, and we don't always have enough rooms for all the fellows that come to the fellowship. So you have to be prepared that you may have to do some searching for your own housing. The fellows can live on their own. In fact, a number of our fellows do, have found their own housing, and we can provide some resources and tips on how to look for housing, and because everyone here at Atlas Corps has done it themselves, so we can provide you some suggestions. But fellows a lot of times will be looking for housing. In other cities outside of Washington, D.C., I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but we do have fellows in other parts of the country besides Washington, D.C., New York, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Portland, San Francisco, a lot of different cities. If you're serving in a city outside of Washington D.C., usually your host organization might make some suggestions of where to look, but again, you're likely going to have to do some searching on your own. So Atlas Corps and your host organization will try and provide suggestions and resources to help you find housing. We also do have some of those group houses, but you need to be prepared to think that you may be searching for housing on your own.
Okay. And what is the budget like?
Sure. So the budget is a very basic living stipend. We actually based it off the amount that American volunteers in a program called AmeriCorps receive. So it is enough to cover food, shared housing, not enough to live on your own necessarily, but to live with roommates, and local transportation. It's not enough for going out a lot, to eat or for entertainment. It's not enough to live in a very expensive apartment or to travel and tour the country. You should prepare to have some money for emergencies. It's manageable if you budget. Rena said earlier that she's adjusted to that well. It is a challenge. It is definitely a challenge to live on this basic stipend. In terms of actual amounts, I think the amount that Washington, D.C. fellows receive is around $1,350 a month. And then it varies based on city. So some cities that have higher cost of living receive a higher stipend. Cities with a lower cost of living receive a lower stipend. Any other thoughts on the stipend?
Yeah, it is a bit challenging, I guess, especially at first when you're actually trying to get to know the place and get to organize yourself and all that. But then I think it gets better. Yeah, but if you're totally not good at budgeting, managing your finance will give you a good experience, I guess, to learn to do that. A number of our fellows say that one of the things that they learn from the fellowship is budgeting. And the last thing I want to add is that we also consider it not really enough money to send money back home. So if you're responsible for a family, your family finances, it's something to consider that you're not going to be able to send a lot of money or hardly any money back home from this fellowship itself. So something to think about. Yeah, I don't know, but for me, like the first few months, I had to spend from my own money on top. So just to and then but then you can kind of like fall into place. And try and spend what you have. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, great. And can fellows bring in their families?
Yes. So to answer this question, we discourage people from bringing their family. It's not something we would suggest. Fellows are allowed to bring their family, but there's really a lot of challenges associated with that we don't recommend it. For one thing, the stipend, like we just covered, it's really only meant for one person, and even that is challenging. So to use the stipend to cover, your spouse and or your kids, it'd be really, really difficult. America can be very expensive in our big cities, especially. The health insurance also is intended for only one person. So we provide health insurance for each of our fellows. We do not provide health insurance for family members. We also do not sponsor visas for family members. So it can be very difficult to even come here physically. We're not sponsoring our fellows. We sponsor on a J1 visa. We do not sponsor J2 visas for spouses or other family members. So if your family were going to come either visit you or live here for the year, then you guys would be responsible entirely for the expenses related to that and obtaining the visa, which in most cases would be like a tourist visa to come and visit. But if someone were going to be here to work or to go to grad school or to do another J1 training program, all of that would be your family's responsibility because we do not sponsor visas. So it's likely that you're going to be apart from your family for the year. That said, we have had, in a few rare cases, families or fellows bring family here for either short periods of time or the whole year, but they were entirely responsible for the expenses related to that and obtaining the visa. And it can be a very challenging year if that's what you do.
Okay. And what about the training program that Atlas Corps provides? What can fellows expect out of that?
Yeah, so this is what we call our Global Leadership Lab. We have, it begins with our week-long orientation at the beginning of the year, and then we have 3 4-day, what we call immersions throughout the year. So one in January, one in May, and one in September, of 4 days each. 12 total, where you are learning from experts in the nonprofit management field, experts in various subjects related to NGOs, from grants management to project management, social media, communications, leadership, a lot of different topics that our fellows have actually voted on as what they thought would be the most important subjects that they wanted to learn about. And then in addition to that, we have monthly webinars. So once a month, and they're actually led by fellows. Fellows will present on a topic that they're experts on. And it can be sort of a subject or a content-related subject, so for example, LGBT rights, or it could be a particular skill set, so on social media or something like that. So they present these monthly webinars, and then there's also sometimes discussions or readings online, but I should say it's not a full-time class. So when we say that you're doing trainings, it's not like you're enrolled in a university. It's not like you're going to have homework every single week. It's more interspersed than that. It's kind of a trainings that you attend every once in a while, not like all the time, like a full-time class.
Okay. And I guess it's also a good opportunity to bring fellows together as well.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you get to meet all the other fellows during the Global Leadership Lab week training, which is also good.
Awesome.
Okay, so maybe we can talk more about post-fellowship.
Yeah. So some applicants have questions about what's required of them after the fellowship. So in particular, we talk about how it's required that fellows want to return home at the end of the fellowship. There can be sort of a broad definition of home. If you're returning to your home region as opposed to your specific home country, that's totally within the bounds of the fellowship. So if you're from Nigeria and you end up getting a job in Kenya afterwards, that is totally acceptable within our requirements. The most important thing is that you're not staying in the U.S. after the fellowship. If you, there's also sort of a State Department requirement. In addition to the Atlas Corps 1-year home requirement, there's also a State Department requirement that some fellows, not all, some fellows get put on their passports that they have to live in their home country for 2 years before applying for other kinds of visas. So you'd have to, if you get that requirement put on your visa, and it's somewhat unpredictable who gets it and not, then you would have to live in your country for 2 years before applying for certain types of visas, not all visas. It wouldn't prevent you from coming back for graduate school or another training program or a tourist visa, but it could prevent you from, say, applying for an immigrant visa or a work visa or certain things like that. So I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs of that State Department requirement. It's something that you can ask questions about or do a little bit of research if you think that that's something that might apply to you. The most important thing is that you're just going to be returning home after the fellowship and leaving the U.S. We have had fellows that come back after the fellowship within that 1 year for graduate school or for another training program, and in each case they've had to apply for a waiver from our requirement in order to stay in good standing as alumni. So it is possible to come back for graduate school after the fellowship, or to come back as a tourist is very okay. Coming back for a conference once, for 1 week, totally acceptable within the fellowship. You're not barred completely. Yeah, exactly. But that's a little bit about that home residency requirement. And in terms of alumni engagement, we try to engage alumni in our trainings. All of the trainings that we do, alumni are welcome at. and some of the conferences that we have fellows go to. We also try to post opportunities for them. So, you know, and even fellows themselves will post opportunities on our networks of, hey, there's this job opening, you know, check it out, and try, you know, really, alumni try and stay in touch with each other and use that network. And so even if it's something like you're working on a project at work after the fellowship, and you're like, wow, you know, we're going to be working in Cambodia, and I don't know anyone in Cambodia. You know, you might post a question online and say, oh, does anyone know anyone working in this area? And so those are the kinds of questions that, you know, fellows might ask, and people will chip in with their thoughts and their resources. So that network is really helpful. And the last thing I'll mention is that we also have a discounted membership at debx.com. If you haven't heard of it, it's an international development website where they also post a lot of they post job opportunities. A lot of huge international organizations are on it, and it's a great place to look for jobs after the fellowship. So we do offer a heavily discounted membership there to our fellows and alumni to help them in their job search. And so those are some of the ways that we try and engage fellows after the fellowship.
Okay, great. I think that's about it, right?
Yeah. So those are our top 12 frequently asked questions. If you have further questions, I'd encourage you to email apply@atlascorp.org. That's apply@atlascorps.org. And you can even include the subject line question from a webinar participant, so that we know you know, that you already checked out the webinar, and we'll try and get those questions. We do receive a lot of emails at that email address, so thank you in advance for your patience, but we do try and answer every question that comes our way about the fellowship, and can often help you out if you have further questions. So that covers the main part of what we wanted to go over. In the remaining time, I'd like to go over any questions you guys have. So I'm going to take a look at the comments if you guys may have posted on our YouTube account or our YouTube video, and see if you guys have any questions so far. And feel free to chat them in the chat box of this YouTube video, and I'll take a look at them. All right, I'm going to start at the bottom. So Marcella asks, how often a host organization offers the fellowship extension? Great question. Well, both the host organization and the fellow have to agree on an extension. So as far as offers go, I'm not 100% sure. But in terms of the actual number of extensions we have, it varies between a third and half of our fellows extending the fellowship. So around at least a third of our fellows extend from, say, 12 months to longer than that, up to 18 months total. She also asks, until now, what is the best part of your experience as an Atlas Corp fellow? I think this is for Brenda.
This is for me.
Yes.
That's a difficult question. But I guess what I can call the best part is like just having to work in a different context has been the best part. Having to do something different than what I was doing the last 3 years is the best part for now. Yeah.
Awesome. It's just like our slogan, change your perspective, change the world. Great. And so another viewer asks, should applicants indicate a particular NGO where they would like to intern during the fellowship in the application? Thank you. Like we talked about, we may not have gotten there in the webinar yet, but you can indicate specific NGOs where you are interested in serving, but there are no guarantees that you'll be placed there. It's really just for informational purposes. In most cases, and sometimes fellows will suggest NGOs, and it's actually an NGO that we're already in conversations with about the fellowship. So feel free to suggest or indicate, but you won't be able to expect that's where you would get placed. Did the fellows recognize significant changes after the program in work, practical skills, so on? Yeah, we have gotten a lot of positive feedback from fellows who say that they learn so much for the fellowship, and sometimes they don't even realize the value of the fellowship until they are in their next stage, or in their next position. Had fellows say that they just learn so much about being a professional, how to engage in an international NGO, really being able to look at things in a different way, how to be flexible and adventurous. So some of those soft skills are some of the things that fellows learn a lot about, and as well the very kind of hard skills, the very particular things that they're working on. If you're spending 40 hours a week working on grants management, that's something that you are going to come out of this being really, really really have a lot of expertise on. I don't know if you had any thoughts about what changes you might see having gone through part of the program.
Yeah, I think just like you said earlier, Meredith, it's just maybe a change of perspective more for me. It's like trying to see things done from like a headquarter level rather than a country level. It's quite different and more strategic, I could say. And it's like you can see how things are directed downwards from a headquarter level to a country level. So in that sense, it's quite different. But my other colleagues or my other fellows also have different experiences. People, like, some of them would say their English is getting better and they really like it, and their like colleagues are very supportive to help them always with that. And some people are doing quite different things that they've never done before, like working on terms of reference for positions in country level where they know how things go, and they could also benefit their host organization with their input on that. So it's quite different, and some people are doing a lot of research as well with their host organization. They're gaining a lot of skills as well. And also just to see how things are done in the U.S. part of the world, I guess, is also interesting.
Awesome. Yeah. And some of our fellows, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but some of our fellows have actually been hired by their host organizations back in their home countries. So not in the U.S., but a Brazilian, for example, being hired by her organization back in Brazil. So sometimes fellows even get like job offers specifically from the fellowship. So let's see. What's the objective of 6 essays in online application? Is it to check our English knowledge or something else? I mean, we do look at your English from that. Although if you've gotten, it's not just English, though. We really are looking at the content of those answers when we score your applications. So, I think one of the questions is, for example, talk about an initiative you've led or a project that you've led. So in that question, we really are looking for leadership skills, someone who's going to be a strong leader in this fellowship. If there's a question about why should a host organization select you, we really are looking for someone who can sort of describe and almost brag about themselves a little bit and describe why they're a good fit for the fellowship. Talking about why you meet the eligibility requirements is not enough to get you accepted for the fellowship. You really have to have a very strong background because it's very competitive. So we actually are looking at the content of those questions. So it's not just about English. All right. So another applicant asks, if I meet the eligibility requirements, is it possible for me to apply for the ASCOR? Even if I'm already in the U.S., I've been holding an F1 visa, but I may need to change. Do I need to go back home? Okay, so there's a lot of questions here. I'll answer in sort of a broad case, and then if you have further questions about your specific case, you may want to email us if you haven't already. So in a broad sense, yes, we have had fellows who were actually in the U.S. Right before the fellowship. They were either in graduate school or they were doing an internship or something like that, and possibly on an F1 visa if they're in grad school. They are still eligible for the fellowship, definitely, as long as they still have an intention to return home after the end of the fellowship. That's the thing we're most concerned about, that people want to return home. And so if someone's in the U.S., that's just something we'd want to make sure that we're on the same page about that. And in terms of the visa, what we've had fellows do who are in the U.S. on some other visa, in general, fellows then return to their home country, apply for a visa there, and then we pay for their round-trip flight or for their ticket back to the U.S. to start the fellowship. So fellows who are in the U.S. currently are still going to have to leave the country. And it doesn't have to be their home country, though it's highly, highly preferred. Fellows who are in the U.S. do generally still have to leave the country in order to apply for their visa, to get a J1 visa to do the program. So, so it sounds like you're still eligible for the fellowship and could still, just from this brief description you've given me, it sounds like you could do the fellowship from that background. All right. What are the rough working hours per week for fellows? In general, full-time in the U.S. means about 40 hours a week. We've definitely had fellows who are working beyond 40 hours a week, though hopefully not too much beyond 40 hours a week. But I'd say it varies between like maybe 37 to maybe 45 or so. I don't know what your general hours are.
No, mine are 40. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Next question is working with an NGO as a full-time employee for 5 years meet the experience criteria for application? Absolutely, yeah. 5 years of experience in an NGO definitely meets the requirement. Okay, I applied last year in March. Is it possible to apply now? So if you were a finalist, you don't necessarily need to apply again. You would just need to sign fill out the finalist agreement that we sent out to finalists. If you were determined to be a finalist, yes, you can apply again. We usually tell people, please only apply once a year. So if you weren't accepted for the fellowship before, then it's been a year since you've applied, so you may have built up more professional experience. Your English may be better than it was a year ago. So in that case, yeah, you definitely could apply and see if you get further in the application process this time. The next question is, I already had the interview with one member of the selection panel. Now I'm waiting for the results of stage 3, hopefully in a week. Can I still suggest a host organization? So yeah, if you're still being considered, we're going to be letting people know very, very soon. I'm hoping this week, but very soon we'll be sending out a notification to everyone. You can, still suggest a host organization, but right now we are almost done with placements for our May class, so it would be just for informational purposes, something that we could consider for our September class. Someone wants to know the eligible age for applicants. So 23 to 35, and some people ask, I'm 35 right now, could I be considered for the fellowship? What our cutoff date is you have to be 35 or younger on the first day of the fellowship, and then you could turn 36 on day 2 or day 3, which we've actually had fellows do, and you still fit the eligibility requirement. So anywhere from around age 22 or 23, as long as you have 2 years of professional experience, up to age 35. Is there any host organization that is interested in applicants involved in the media sphere? Absolutely. We actually have 2 fellows who are placed at Voice of America, which is an international media organization. We have another fellow placed at Global Press Institute in San Francisco. So definitely media is something that can be very interesting for our fellows and host organizations. Next question, is it true that the more experience you have, longer working time, the higher chance you have to get the fellowship? How high is the matching rate between a successful applicant to a host organization? If the selected applicant can be matched with a host organization, will he or she get the $500 back? Okay, so the 3 different questions here, I'll try and take them one at a time. One is, I wouldn't necessarily say that the more experience you have, the higher your chance to get the fellowship. The average experience level for our fellows is probably around 6 years of experience. The average age of our fellows is about 28 or 29. So it's not like the majority of our fellows are 34 and 35. in fact, a lot of our placements are for someone who's kind of mid-career. And occasionally we do have a placement that's, someone even says we're looking for someone with who's not as experienced. We're looking for someone with 2 or 3 years of experience, and sometimes we can find a good fit for them by taking one of those younger, less experienced applicants. We also have host organizations who are looking for, they're saying, we want someone who is going to be amazing, really, really experienced, can handle a lot of responsibility and jump right in. And so in that case, we would be looking for someone who has a higher level experience. It really ranges, and I can't give you necessarily an answer of how it affects your chances specifically. As far as the matching rate between a successful applicant to a host organization, so our acceptance rate for all our applicants is about 2.5% or 3%. So we get around 2,000 or 2,500 applicants a year, and of that we had about 75 fellows accepted last year. So you can do the math. We're hoping to have even more than that, more fellows this year, but also more applicants. So the acceptance rate is very, very small, and if for any particular applicant, the acceptance rate is pretty slim. It's a very competitive program. And then finally, if the selected applicant can't be matched with the host organization, will he or she get the $500 back? So first of all, just in case, for those of you who aren't aware, what this person is referring to is the $500 participation fee. So you don't actually pay the $500 unless you are actually accepted to the fellowship. You come and pay it your first week in Washington, D.C. You don't pay it just to apply or if you're being interviewed by a host organization. So if you're not matched with the host organization, you don't have to pay anything. And if you are accepted for the fellowship and you pay your $500 participation fee, then you're eligible for an end-of-service award of up to $1,000 if you complete all the requirements of the fellowship successfully. So that's a little bit how that fee works. Great. Someone asked about the English test. It's not quite like the TOEFL test. It's more like an essay. Yeah, exactly. It's 2 essay questions. You have an hour to answer the questions. It's not going to be quite like a TOEFL test, although I admit I'm not as knowledgeable about TOEFL. And someone asked, is it possible for us to continue our relationship with host organization after we return back home? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some people are hired by their host organization after going back home, and some folks continue on in other ways. They are consulting for their organization, etc. Or they may still use them as a reference, etc. All right, so looking at further questions, we do just have a few minutes left, mm-hmm. So I may not get to all these questions. All right. Next question. So someone is asking about the bachelor's degree. So what does it mean what's the bachelor's degree requirement? We're looking for usually like a 4-year equivalent degree. So we are looking for someone with who has 4 years or 3 or 4 years of higher education to get a degree like that. So just a professional certificate, for example, or a 2-year degree isn't quite what we're looking for this fellowship. If you're denied entry to the U.S. before, are you qualified to apply? Yes, you can apply. Just please do note it on your application. It does mean that getting you a visa for the fellowship may be a little bit more difficult, and it's something for us to be aware of. And we have a pretty good track record of getting visas for people or helping people secure visas, even from very difficult visa backgrounds. But it could make getting your visa, if you're accepted to the fellowship, more difficult. Is the fellow likely to be chosen to work in a domain that he has experience in, or would be considered for other domains as well? So sometimes fellows are selected for fellowships or roles where it doesn't exactly match what their experience is in. So a fellow may have tons of experience in economic development and event planning, and then they get accepted for a fellowship that's totally on a different subject, but that event planning experience is so key. They need someone to, plan a huge international conference. And it doesn't actually matter exactly what their interest area was, but the skill level, the skill particular matters a lot. Or the reverse of that, a host organization may consider, it doesn't actually matter to them exactly what their skill set is in it, as long as they're super interested in learning about this particular topic and can be an expert on it, and are going to be a quick learner to learn the skills that they need. It really varies on placement. So I'd say it is possible to sort of change focus in your placement from what you've done in the past. That being said, it's harder to do. We do match people based on their past experience, so it's going to be harder to make a shift like that. All right. What are some of the challenges as a fellow other than budget constraints? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. For me, it was more like maybe the cold weather. I'm coming from Sudan, so it's very hot there, and winter here was a bit tough.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a bit challenging. And also living with other people in a house can be challenging as well. So if you're not used to that, I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm not used to that. So it can be a bit challenging as well. So that's from my experience so far. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and other things that I've heard is maybe adjusting to U.S. office culture. You may be super experienced professional in your country, but the U.S. may have just a different office culture than you're used to, and that can be an adjustment for people.
Yeah.
So that's one of the other challenges I've heard.
They love emails here.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're very big on email.
Yeah, you can expect to be emailed from someone sitting across from you.
Yes, exactly. A lot of fellows have mentioned that they're surprised by that. So I'm just going to answer 3 more questions really quickly, and we have reached our hour mark. If you need to sign off, go ahead and do so. But I'm going to answer a few more questions. So someone has been a recipient of the State Department exchange grant before. I've completed my home residency requirement. Does the fact that I was on a scholarship before negatively affect my application? Nope, not at all. Definitely, you're still qualified based on what you've told me so far. You're still qualified to be considered for the fellowship, and that past experience, only adds to your application. How many fellows and how many host organizations does Atlas Corps reach out to in a year? So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by reach out to. Last year, we had around, I think around 75 fellows in the U.S. It's grown over time. Our very first class of fellows was I think just 6 fellows. So we've grown a lot over time. And I don't know the number of host organizations per year. We have engaged in total around 119 host organizations, and that is only growing, every few months. So that's around the number of those numbers. Will there be real field level experience in host organizations, or will it be more documentation and office works? Great question. Actually, it is more office work. It's pretty rare, though it's not unheard of, but I'd say it's not often the case that fellows are doing field work or direct service with clients. Fellows are mainly doing work in the office, things like the grants management or project management, financial management, things like that. Managing things from that level as opposed to doing specific things in the field. That being said, sometimes fellows are doing it, but it is less common than the office work. And then I think the last question I'll take. How many opportunities are there for technology professionals and graduates like me to be placed in organizations where they can apply their expertise in NGOs? Another great question. We do have opportunities for people with sort of more of a tech background in information and communication technologies for development, who have that background and can apply it to the social sector. So we have had fellows who have worked on like website development projects and social media, or even more, I don't know, other computer-related projects. I admit I'm not the most technically inclined person myself. So other people who are doing technology-related projects for social missions. So there is opportunities like that. All right, those are all the questions I'm going to take right now. I do see some more questions here. I'm going to try and answer them in the comments, and then I'm going to be turning off comments on this video. So if you have any further questions, please, again, email us at apply@atlascorps.org, and we will try to get you to your question as soon as we can. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you, and yes, good luck.
Yes, we appreciate your interest in our program, and we hope to see you apply. I look forward to reading all of your wonderfully written applications. So thanks so much, guys, and have a great day. Bye.